it to practice. It's not an abstract legal discussion. It's legal analysis, but also related to what's actually going on. And again, that will be interesting when we discuss the book. The second point I want to make is that AI requires not only investment in technology, but investment in education and skills. And we see many interesting initiatives in the trade union world where we try to also from the EU level support a better understanding from the social partners about how AI works, because that will be absolutely essential for a meaningful discussion on AI. And also we need to have more people overall in the competitiveness concept that can work with AI, but not in a purely technological sense, but to make the link between AI and the work organization and HR issues, for example. And then I also mentioned the key role of social dialogue. So if I just end by saying what the EU is doing for the moment, so we will present a quality jobs roadmap. The college will present that. I understand now it's confirmed for the college agenda for the 3rd of December. These things can always change, as you know, but that is the aim. And we have that quality jobs roadmap is based on a series of consultations. And we did actually for the first time, and I'm very happy about that we also met with the social partners at national level in all member states to discuss. And I did several of those discussions. It was very, very interesting. This is beyond AI. It's all the current work organization issues that will be taken up in the quality jobs roadmap. And then, as you all know, or many of you know, our President, Ursula von der Leyen, also announced that at the end of next year, we will have a Quality Jobs Act. So the Quality Jobs Roadmap is of course, the starting point for that discussion on a Quality Jobs Act. And here, I don't want to be too... how do I say? I mean, I would like to also to make one more point that shows how important the discussion is today, because in the competitiveness agenda, of course, the issue about showing a legal gap, showing an added value for regulation and other action is even more acute than ever. So I think that the investment in gathering that data, in doing that analysis, is more important than ever. And that's again why I would thank you for being here today and looking forward to the debate. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, clear. Happy to hear about the Quality Jobs Roadmap and Act to be presented. We have heard already a number of employers being strictly against that. So it's going to be extremely interesting development and process. But thanks for this. I'm actually passing the floor to you, Laszlo, to moderate the first part of the agenda. So the presentation of the book.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Indeed, as Stefan said, he saved some time for the discussion. But indeed, we now look forward to the very interesting discussion about this volume with the editors and the authors. And Stefan stays also to offer afterwards some kind of first reaction to this volume. Look, we are really proud of this volume, and that's why we invited the editors, but also some of the authors to share some thoughts with you. So I would like to introduce now all the panelists and say a few words about the publication itself. The two editors with us on the left are Maja Fjaestad, who is a former State Secretary for Health from Sweden, but she's also a special advisor for the president of the Karolinska Institute. And Vinge is the chief economist of the Akademikerförbundet, SSR trade union. Cool? Thank you so much. And then they will be joined by two of the contributors, Charlotta Kronblad, who is postdoctoral researcher for the Department of Applied IT at the University of Gothenburg, and Christina Colclough, who's founder of the Why Not Lab. They are on the right. So first, the editors will speak, but before that, let me just stress again that for FEPS, the publication of this book is really a milestone, and it's partly connecting the two digital programs which we have been working on, and the authors were with us in the previous one, and I think they will guide through this publication the thinking, the discussions of the next stage. So it's also very useful in the Brussels environment, although the evidence which is presented mainly comes from the north, but we believe strongly that it has an all-European significance, because much of the issues at the workplace resulting from the spread of new technologies, especially AI, can be indeed shared. It is also a timely publication because the AI continues to be a priority topic within the European digital policy, not only European, right? It's a worldwide issue. And in Europe, we also sometimes feel that we are lagging behind. We're not necessarily in the front line, not generating the cutting edge of the new technologies and how we can accelerate technological development for the sake of productivity, but at the same time also manage the risks which are entailed in this process is something we have been discussing for years, but it also needs to be turned into policy. And that's, of course, what highlights the importance of discussing all this in Brussels. So it's a very important one for progressives, trade unionists, and also to save ourselves from the so-called doomsday scenarios. Because sometimes we find ourselves between the utopia and dystopia. Sometimes we believe that the digital world just brings all the fruits and all the options, and we walk around with 2 or 3 gadgets in our pocket to be connectable. But connectable sometimes also means we are controllable. So we fall into the dystopian end of it, and we start to fear and disconnect, and we would need to find somehow the balance. And I hope these studies will help finding the right balance and inform the policy-making process as well. The complementary copies of the book can be found outside. I hope there are still volumes, and you can pick it up for yourself. Otherwise, if you prefer digital, FEPS almost always publishes the PDF on the website, and you can also download it if you want to save forests and the natural environment. And after the panelists spoke, there will be a Q&A, so I also shall ask everybody to remain within the time frame, and then we will have time for an interaction with our audience today. With this, I would like to hand over the microphone to Simon and Maja. Maja and Simon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Stefan, for a very insightful introduction, and also thank you, Laszlo. I made a small PowerPoint, so sort of have something to catch the eye. So, Algorithmic Rule, and this book that is now a red book started as a yellow book that was published in Swedish 1 year ago, and the beginning of this book was actually that Simon and I was working together in the Swedish government offices 15 years ago. So before AI was a thing, which, it wasn't, because AI has been a thing for 100 years. But when we started working on this book, we found the debate surprisingly naive, and we found the debate being at a starting point, even though AI was in the midst of changing society. And the book has achieved a remarkable success. I think our publishing company is still in shock. The second edition just sold out. And we also realized that there's an interest from a European perspective on these topics. I mean, both because Scandinavia has often been leading the way to workers' involvement, and actually it's not in the tech area, and also because everyone is discussing how are we going to deal with AI and algorithms in the public sector. So one important starting point for Simon and I are the concept of technopolitics, so technology is power. And on the notion of technology's power, of course, they're following many other concepts. And one is that we have to be involved. Workers' voice has to be present in technology. And workers also, of course, have to use technology. And I think the important point also made by Laszlo here, that between utopia and dystopia also, of course, means that we need to be involved, and we also need to both shape and use technology. And we're both a little bit mesmerized by the concept of algocracy. And apart from being a bit too complicated word to pronounce, it's the incorporation of algorithms into governance. And I mean, we see the use of AI everywhere, of course. There's a lot of use of AI in the private sector that is both fantastic. I think we all use AI every day, right? And there's a lot of AI in the private sector that is problematic. And we're trying to deal with that in different ways. But of course, there's something special about public actors using AI, because when public actors use AI or algorithms, they do so with the power that we delegated to them. They do so with the power of democracy, and they do so as representatives for us. And we're used to having influence, and we should claim that influence. And I think, in the digital politics, we've seen people sitting in panels in, fancy pastel-colored shirts for 30 years, saying that, we need completely new set of laws. The internet is something new. And our point is actually that, we don't need a new set of rules. We need to use the rules we have. We need to use legislation. We need to use collective bargaining. And for example, just by starting with principles of transparency, and Sweden, as many other countries in Europe, has a public publicity principle. And just by applying that, we're a long way ahead, actually. But just as a starting point to use existing tools. One of the examples in this book is, I think, well discussed in Europe, but wasn't very well discussed in Scandinavia, actually. It was often called the Dutch child allowance scandal, when the Dutch government used an algorithm to find people who were allegedly cheating with child support allowances. And one of the aspects in this algorithm was you were flagged as a suspected cheater if you had a double citizenship. So I think all of us can understand what happened. A lot of immigrants was flagged as cheaters, and they, many of them ended up in economic ruin. And even though the Dutch government did sort of suffer the consequences of this, this is one of the early examples of how technology is used to obscure the exercise of power, and how that affects weak groups in society, and how that also can affect workers, of course. And I'm often fascinated that we end up in very cliched or old-fashioned descriptions of technology. We often end up describing technology as self-driving force, and this has sometimes been described as sort of the linear model in sociology. And of course, we know that we can affect technological development, but we still end up in this description. And another false dichotomy that is often repeated, I think, in the European context is that regulation stifles innovation. And I think many of us hear that repeated time and time again. And that has been proven wrong many times, of course, by scholars, but also by reality. Regulation has a fantastic possibility of actually driving innovation. And nobody claims that speed limits, restrict the innovation in the car industry. It probably does, but we're not against speed limits because we want to innovate faster cars. We want to have a safe society. And we need to be able to trust the process of regulation also in AI topics. And of course, the notion that technology is power also means that we need to transform power from the robot here to the lady. And these kind of dichotomies end up in our descriptions of tech, both in sort of human, technological, regulation, innovation, male, female, and these rhetoric figures keep reoccurring. So on algocracy, we end up with this kind of conclusion. And yeah, this is where I spoiled the end of the book, but please still read it. So technology is political. Technology expresses norms and values, and since they do, we need to put technology under democratic scrutiny. And Simon, how are we going to do that?
Thank you, Maja, for this good question, and thank you also for the Workers Group to co-host this event. together with FEPS. I think the voice of this committee will be very, very important in the work that's coming up. And also thanks, of course, to FEPS for helping with all the work in publishing this translation, which is part of this bigger project on how tech is affecting the workplace. And I have brought a picture from a friend. He's a collector of old documents. So it's an original copy of Sweden's law from 1766 on the Freedom of Information Act, allegedly one of the world's first. I don't know if this is true, but it's a powerful concept, an idea, because it also includes the freedom of accessing government acts. So this was quite early. So we started this book, as Maja has mentioned, by this idea that if we have had this law for several hundred years, I mean, it should be mature enough, it should be institutionalized enough so that we can also handle the digital transformation and the automation of a public administration. So this is what we try to answer in the book. And I mean, without any foregone conclusions, we would say that we haven't really managed the algocracy in the public administration. So that could be seen as one conclusion, but we can still do it, I think, together, because politics can change this. At the same time, I jokingly sometimes refer to this as the level one. Public administration should be explainable, it should be transparent, be possible to appeal. This is not easy stuff, but I found only so far one person who disagrees with me here, of all the people I've met discussing this. So level two then, that would be the algocracy at work. I work for a trade union, as Laszlo mentioned, and we all have heard about this, the warehouse example. It's almost a bit old now. We've discussed it for 10 years. The workers get their task from the headset in real time. If they deviate more than 30 centimeters from their prescribed path, they will have a disciplinary action, etc. I mean, this is a dystopic future, and it's not conducive for organizing members, of course, nor for health. But I organize white-collar associate professionals, and I see the same tendencies here. And when we think about it, the data that can be gathered about a professional today is, in a way, even greater than the warehouse example. Because every email you send, every scheduled appointment is a data point that will be used if we don't take action. So this is what we have seen, and we write about it in the book. So I would say we risk losing control of our work. And we could frame this, of course, as a philosophical question. We could frame it as a question about my members and how they feel. But we all know that these are not really topics on the agenda in Brussels today. Rather, we talk about competitiveness, growth, preparedness. So let's put the question like this. Does the surveillance built into these algorithmic management tools, do they enhance productivity for our workers in Europe? And this is, of course, a rhetorical question because the answer is no, and we all know this. I mean, we have an economy and a society that is based on creativity, on new ideas and a diversity of inputs and a plurality of voices. But these tools that we risk employ, they go the very opposite direction. So this is something that we should all work together to oppose. But these are all very abstract concepts. But we have a very concrete example from our public administration in Sweden that Charlotta now will present. Thank you.
Remote, indeed. Charlotta, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think this is a great opportunity to bring together civilian organizations, organizations and institutions to talk about these very important topics. To understand a little bit who I am, why I'm talking about this, and why you should maybe listen to me when I talk about this, is that I used to work as a lawyer for about 10 years before turning into becoming an academic, which I am now. I'm a researcher at Gothenburg University. But before that, I practiced law for about 10 years. And I'm also a mother of 4. And I stumbled across this case due to one of my children being kind of targeted by this algorithm. And what I will talk about is actually one of the first chapters of the book. It's about a school placement algorithm in Gothenburg used in 2020. In Gothenburg, if you have been there, otherwise please, you're welcome to come and visit us. It's a city divided by a large river. And so they had this algorithm, or we have kids all over the city, of course. We have schools in the city. And the city of Gothenburg is the largest school district in Sweden because Stockholm is divided into 4 areas, but Gothenburg is just one. So every year the school administration places around 12,000 kids into schools. And this year they thought, well, why do we always use Excel? This takes time, we lose efficiency and so on. Let's use this software for the first time. So they took in this software and they coded it. And they coded it to place the kids according to the closest school. And how did they define close? Yeah, they used the bird's eye view. And when you use a bird's eye view to decide where to place the kids in a city that is divided by a river, it's going to be a huge problem because kids appear to live close to schools that they don't actually live close to because we don't only have 2 bridges in Gothenburg. So we are seeing here hourly long commutes for thousands of kids. But the problem doesn't stop there because when you add an algorithmic decision-making system, which we do now everywhere, every public institution is using algorithmic decision-making systems. When you use this kind of systematic thinking, it's no longer individual decisions, but every decision depends on the other decisions. So here now comes this red school that you see. That's a school on the opposite side of the city center, kind of built for the 200 kids that live around there. But now 100 kids from the city center is placed there. They can't fit there anymore. So they are like a domino effect being pushed to another school, being pushed to another school, being pushed to another school in, I think it was 6 different domino bricks falling. So you see these ripple effects. So the initial error, because in Sweden the law prescribes you to place kids according to the walking or biking distance to school. But when they did this wrong, they don't only affect those initial problems, but it's 6 other kids being placed in schools where they were not supposed to be placed if the algorithm had been coded correctly from start. And so this is a huge problem because in all our democracies and our legal systems, we are asked to do individual appeals when algorithms fail. But it's really difficult to show if you're that first one being misplaced. That might be easy to show that, this is a bird's eye view perspective you've taken. That's easy to prove. But what about if you're number 5 in that chain? You didn't get the school you wanted, and it's something wrong with the algorithm. How are you going to prove that? And also, why are we calling for individual appeals when it's actually a systematic error? You cannot solve that by individual means. You can only solve it by going back to the algorithm and change the algorithm so that's correct. And so we are seeing here, and with my research, that we are actually having a void in the legal system or the design of the legal system and the rule of law of European democracies that we haven't really looked into because we are, and I think as Stefan was talking about, we have all this new legislation. We have the AI Act, the GDPR, and so on. But to really understand how to fix the rule of law and algorithmic justice in society, we need to know that the procedural rules are still in effect and that we actually can appeal the way that we can actually restore that algorithmic justice. So that's quite, that's the kind of key question here is how do we do that? And for me, it was really, I stumbled across this case as one of my sons were affected by this, and I was a lawyer by trade, but I had just completed a PhD in digital transformation. So I could kind of tell, like, something is up here. They are asking me to appeal this individually, but who's going to take care of the rest of the kids that don't have, like, lawyer moms who will fix it for them? So as a research project, I decided to sue the city of Gothenburg and to actually try to get them to systematically change it for all of the affected children, not just my kids. And so I sued the city and the entire decision-making process, the algorithm as such, in the administrative court of Gothenburg, and trying to see what really will happen when you put an algorithm to legal scrutiny. Will the judges understand the algorithm as evidence in court? Will they hold anyone accountable? Will they correct the errors, and so on? And sadly, I will say, they do not. And I mean, I could do this myself. I'm not the best lawyer in the world, but I worked 10 years with it, and I've also worked as a judge. And it was, for me, impossible to prove that the algorithm was wrong. So I argued, because also 2020 wasn't even legal for the municipality to do automated decision-making. So I was saying, like, just the placement as such is proof that it's automated. Who, like, any citizen or any administrator in Gothenburg would know we have a river. These placements are proof that it is a machine making them, because no human would make this mistake, and not a couple of 100 or 1,000 times. And the court actually said, well, we see what you're saying, but it's up to you. You as the applicant, the civilian, have the burden of proof what the algorithm contains. And as I couldn't prove what the algorithm contained, I asked for it in 20 emails, I never got it. I lost the case due to that practicality, the burden of proof placement. And I think that's really interesting to remember, because we all call for, more legislation. We have the AI Act, we have the GDPR, we have all this legislation, but if the courts don't even understand the simplest of procedural rules and they don't shift the burden of proof, it doesn't matter how many laws we have. So we need to ensure that the legal system can actually handle the rules that we ask them to handle, and that they can actually understand the algorithm as evidence, which they don't today. So I usually play around with this blindfold. Justice is supposed to be blind to whoever's in front of them, no matter if it's rich or poor, if you know them or not. But in this case, I think that the judges and the court system is really blind to the new digital realities that we are seeing. And this is the real black boxing problem, because we all talk about black boxing and technology being quite difficult to understand. And then we talk about, okay, so explainability and, transparency would be the answer, but not really. We need to also understand that we have created layers of black boxing around this, with administrative rules that don't really uphold or don't protect the rule of law anymore. So we really need to ensure that we open those and reveal what's actually in there. And in my case, this wasn't the black box. The technology is super simple. It's, bird's eye view versus walking distance. Everyone can understand that. The tech is not the black box. The black box is the administrative system around it. And also, of course, the city of Gothenburg, who refused to take responsibility for the errors that they actually made here. So are we in trouble, or can we fix this? I think positively enough, we can fix this. And to establish digital justice in these new times, we do need to find a way to allow for systematic appeals and correction of the code, not just the ones that apply or the few kids that have parents that would appeal for them. We also need to change the burden of proof in all algorithmic decision-making cases, so that it's actually the ones that have access to the algorithm that are also forced to prove that they have applied that algorithm in a legal way. Because as it is now, that civilians should prove that the organization or the institution has used it in an illegal way when you don't have access to it. is really impossible. So I think that is key importance. And then also we need to make a system where it actually helps the judges with the determination of the digital evidence to kind of unwrap these black boxes. But it's also important to remember this is not just for algorithmic decision making, but for instance, in criminal cases, we have a huge problem with organized crime, where most of the criminals today do money laundering via cryptocurrencies. And it's a huge problem that the courts, when the judges don't understand that evidence, they let them go, because that's a key. Like, if you're not sure of the evidence, you need to free instead of, imprison people. So we have a lot of cases like this when the judges don't understand the algorithm as evidence or the algorithmic issues in court. And it's not just ADM systems, but also criminal cases. So I think this is a huge, actually a huge opportunity to do better. So thank you so much for listening to me, and do read the book. It's fantastic with all these practical examples, because as Stefan was saying, we need to kind of lift this discussion and not just talk about it as, I think you said very well with the legal kind of discussions. We need to put it up to reality. These are real problems and we need real solutions. And I think we have them, but we just need to take the discussion more seriously. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Christina.
Thank you all. Thank you, Maja and Simon, for inviting Hannah and I to contribute to this wonderful book. Thank you, FEPS, and thanks the organisers today. So what did we write about? We need to zoom out a little bit here and then think of, well, how could we take what Laszlo was saying in the beginning? There's this common saying that Europe is behind China and the United States. And every time I hear that, I want to say, well, actually, we're in front, because we have the regulation basis that is needed. Yes, it needs to be improved, but we have that to actually put human rights, fundamental rights, at the center of digital change. And in that way, actually promote and not exploit the rights of people. So Hannah and I wanted to take this opportunity to write a chapter on how could we promote not only digital sovereignty, which we've heard from Ursula von der Leyen this year, that this will be very important for the Commission. So how could we do that and possibly do it through public procurement policies, which, of course, as you probably all know, the Commission is revising or wanting to revise the Public Procurement Directive. So how do we take digital sovereignty? How do we ensure we don't become too dependent on American tech or others' tech, and really sort of support the European tech industry under the rule of law and with respect to fundamental rights? So this is what she said, and if we go back some years, well, actually public procurement has consistently through history been used to further public policies. So public procurement could indeed shape the market as well as it could shape the whole European future and this quest for digital sovereignty. Indeed, public procurement in the European Union is huge. This is the annual spending on public procurement, not just in terms of digital, but in all, and these are quite a lot of zeros. 2.5 trillion euros every single year. Now, to help us understand that, if we say 1 cent is 1 second, this is the same as almost 80,000 years every year that is being spent on public procurement. i.e., there's money enough flying around Europe for us to truly invest in digital technologies in respect of fundamental rights. Public procurement, just to put another figure on the table, since 2009 has risen 900%. This speaks, of course, and we can't go into that now in this short amount of time, but the increasing privatization of public services. My quest here, and with Hannah in this chapter, is that we reverse our feelings about public services. Stop calling public service workers as cold hands and instead put the pride back into the public service as the driver of constructive change. But there's a but. There always is. If we look at what's happened the last year in public procurement and how much money has been spent on American big tech. In the UK, as you can hear, I'm from there, £330 million was awarded to Palantir, probably the worst company in the world, owned by Peter Thiel, who supports J.D. Vance. It's all intertwined. This is about their health records. The European Union, since Ursula von der Leyen said what she did, has just awarded €550 million to Amazon Web Services. Later, they gave Microsoft €400 million in contracts. So despite the quest and the want for more digital sovereignty, we are pouring a lot of taxpayers' money into the hands of these American big tech companies. Indeed, the European Union actually conceded, yes, it probably will be unrealistic to free ourselves from the dependency on American tech. Well, really, is it that unrealistic? So what can we do? Public procurement and digital sovereignty go hand in hand. If we continue to prioritise through public procurement a cost minimalisation strategy as we do now, well then no, we cannot further the protection. And I think, as Charlotta so rightly pointed out, the idiocy of many of these systems. Kate Crawford, brilliant researcher, said a couple of years ago, artificial intelligence is neither artificial or intelligent. And I think Charlotta's example here shows that. But we can continue through public procurement and the trillions of euros spent there to really continue this race to the bottom. What I think is paradoxical right now is the European Commission is thinking of watering down the GDPR, the EU AI Act, at a time where the President of the United States is doing what he's doing. We should be responding with the reverse. And here we could, through a revision of public procurement laws, so it aligns with public interests, it aligns with sustainable development, and not least our fundamental rights. The way we argue for this in the chapter is how can we look at non-monetary reward criteria? And this is what we argue for in our chapter through 6 principles. And you're probably going to die when you hear more principles. We don't need more principles, we need action. But don't worry, in the article we actually put some beef and bone onto this and say, what do we mean? For example, and I think Charlotta's example is brilliant, transparency and explainability. I know only one country in Europe, and it's the municipality of Helsinki, who has an AI register, where you can go as a citizen, see what AI systems is the council using, for what purposes, and they add a contact person. A lot of us don't have that. We don't know. We have this information asymmetry in the black box. So how do we, not only through the procurement contracts, who is procuring what and who's responsible, but also what are these systems? In the UK, when I wrote a report for the British Trade Union movement around the digitalisation of public services, the unions could not even be told who were the developers of these systems, which were fundamentally flawed. So transparency, explainability. We also need environmental impact assessments as well as fundamental rights impact assessments as predicted in the AI Act. Why environmental impact assessments? Because these technologies are, of course, based on huge data center systems, which are requiring a lot of water. In Amsterdam, there's a data center which is now drawing so much water out of the land around it that farmers can no longer farm their land in a 15-kilometer radius. So we need to look at these claims of productivity against, of course, the degradation of our environment. Fundamental rights impact assessments, well, we all know that this will be essential. Charlotta's example just says so. Inclusive governance. What we propose there is that all these systems must be governed ex ante, so before they are put in place, but also whilst they're being used, with voices of the subjects at the table. So in workplaces, that's the workers. But if it's a public service algorithm matching the long-term unemployed with jobs, well, representatives of the long-term unemployed should be at the table. We also need to make sure, and ironically, and I think this is interesting, the Trump administration issued, just before we wrote this book was published, wrote their guidelines for procurement in the United States. In that, it says that the public services must avoid tech dependency, or vendor lock-in, they call it. Well, look at the figures I showed you before. We all know every single country in Europe is highly dependent on Microsoft, yet we're doing very little about it. Yet the country where Microsoft comes from warns against this dependency. So how do we make sure public services don't become sort of subordinate to the whims of commercial companies? How do we maintain that they have access and control over the data, i.e. the means of governance? And Paul Niemitz, you're in the room and you know I love you to bits. The father or one of the main people behind the GDPR, but there's one big fault in the GDPR. It doesn't question the very business model of the commodification of people and companies and societies. How can we learn from the Californian data protection regulation and actually put prohibition on the table of repurposing and selling data? And lastly, of course, we all need competencies to be able to do what we want to do in workplaces. That's management as well as labour, need to be able to engage meaningfully in these discussions through competencies. So we can table, and I hope the European Union will have the courage to really table some new and innovative ideas in the Public Procurement Directive. Failing that, we can do this on a fragmented basis through collective bargaining, of course, on a national terms. But we definitely, in our article, argue for the latter. And with that, I hope you do read the chapter, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We heard from the editors about the concept and the philosophy of the book, a micro case study from Gothenburg and the macro perspective on public procurement and all the implications regarding the big tech. Stefan, Olsson, what would you like to connect with most of all out of this huge, very inspirational introduction?
Thank you very much, and thanks a lot to everybody involved in the book. I mean, I think as everybody in this room, we're very impressed by. I mean, I'm very impressed by the work, and also because you do it in a very understandable way and show. I think that by doing that, there is this. There are some myths, I think, that we could get caught into. I mean, when we talk about Amazon or this type of, we look at the capitalism, I mean, this sort of, but actually, if you look at the example of the school placement, there is not an ideology of making money, or it's simply it's probably somebody who's actually trying to offer a good public service at the start of it, because resources can be used for other things, and then it goes wrong, so I think that to me is a very good lesson, that we need to look at the accidental deployment, and as well as the type of US type of economic deployment, and what because when I heard your presentation, I had a look in the book. I mean, you think, okay, but that's easy to fix, no? I mean, and if you live in Gothenburg, you know about the river, and you know that's a fair, honest mistake, and now we redo it. And so that you can understand. You deploy a new technology, it goes wrong, you fix it. But what is very interesting is that you don't fix it, and it's unfixable, and not even the courts can fix it. And that, of course, is and we saw that in the Dutch. I mean, that okay, the government had to resign, but in the meantime, people were in despair and their lives were destroyed. And so the elementary principles, I think you show, and also in the public procurement example, and that we should not be too sophisticated. We need to start with very basic principles. And I was not aware of the Helsinki Register, but I think it's a fascinating example, and it should be a basis for good public governance. I mean, it's so simple, and so I think for me that Laszlo, is what I see first, is that we can draw, and the book shows very, very, very clear first steps to be taken, and that's why I will also try to get this to as many colleagues and bring it in as much as possible in our internal debate in the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, also for being so focused and highlighting indeed a best practice, which is already a gift of this book to the discussion. Now we indeed have time, so I would like to open an interactive part. I would like to ask the audience if you would like to ask a question. Raise your hand. I can see already one hand and then a few. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
Hang on.
Indeed. You give us a hard time. And then be concise, because the shorter, the briefer, to the point you are, the more people can speak, and also there will be time for the panelists to respond at the very end. I saw this gentleman. I can see the name O'Connor first, and then.
Hang on. I've got Czech on my list. Czech,
Oh, dear.
Philip, Javier, Dumitru, Aida, and Angelo. And
Aurélie.
Diana
Zoe.
and Zoe. Guys, I am afraid that's quite a lot. So again, Jack, Philip, Javier, Dumitru, Aida, Angelo, Aurélie, Diana, and Zoe.
Anyone from the
1 minute each.
We are still having other parts, and as you see, the discipline is perfect. So definitely there's going to be a space for your comments or questions. So Jack, please, really, hopefully not more than 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to all involved in organising today's event, and congratulations to FEPS on the book and the work. But there is a fundamental question, obviously. I haven't read the book, so I'm at a disadvantage, but what you appear to be saying is that we should adopt a pragmatic response and we can navigate around this and legislate around it and so on. I tend to that view myself, but I want to ask a question. I'm sure you're familiar with Stephen Hawking's book, Brief Answers to the Big Questions, because all you've said is about when it goes wrong. All the examples of when it goes wrong. His concern was, he took on board it could go wrong, but his concern is about when it went right. And when this phenomenon developed the capacity to outthink us. And his injunction was that basically we haven't evolved far enough to give birth to this thing. And I just wonder, I presume you've read the book, I just wonder, how do you deal with his injunction?
Thank you very much, Jack. Philip, 1 minute.
Thank you. The last speakers mentioned data centers, and I agree with her that actually there's one of the impacts is environmental degradation. But there is actually a huge level of spending being carried out at the moment on data centers, and this is obviously projected to increase in the years to come. Do you see a risk about this high level of spending and the possible debt that companies could incur because of this high level of spending and the impact of that on the economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier. 1 minute.
Gracias, Lucy. Me ha conmovido la lucha de Charlotta Kronblad con el Ayuntamiento de Gotemburgo. I will speak Spanish. Yes. Digo que me ha conmovido su lucha contra el Ayuntamiento de Gotemburgo y al final me ha desazonado esa justicia ciega, que a veces se dice la justicia tiene que ser ciega, pero ciega en el peor de los sentidos, que revela la sentencia. E inmediatamente me he puesto a pensar en los gastos de jurídicos, de abogados, de las 6 principales compañías multinacionales del mundo, las 6 norteamericanas, para lograr imponer no solamente determinados modelos tecnológicos, sino su voluntad política. He consultado el valor, esta mañana, el valor de las 6, que son las 6 del ranking, la saudita de petróleo, que está un poquito abajo a continuación, es 21 billones de dólares, 21 trillion dólares, más que el PIB de Europa, 3 billones, 3 trillion more PIB, el Gross Domestic Product of Europe. Y recientemente, y esa sería mi pregunta, ¿qué opinan a Laszlo, tal vez a cualquiera, que 2 decisiones de la Comisión Europea en el proceso de negociación de ese acuerdo o capitulación con los Estados Unidos, el acuerdo comercial, hayan establecido un nuevo procedimiento que no solamente es de que sigan sin pagar impuestos, sino que hagamos un dumping fiscal contra las empresas europeas. Es decir, en pleno proceso de negociación, pensando que se podía conseguir cosas cediendo, todo lo contrario, contra un tipo de negociador como Donald Trump, se cancela el impuesto a las digitales y se sustituye por un impuesto a las empresas europeas. Y el G7 de Canadá exceptúa de pagar el 15% como mínimo a todas las multinacionales. Seguirán pagando las de todo el mundo, menos las más grandes, las norteamericanas. Bueno, ¿esto qué es? Estamos en sus manos y estamos colaborando. Creo que es una de las decisiones más lamentables de la Comisión Europea desde su constitución, que no sé si tiene remedio, pero estamos en manos de una gente que hoy sus líderes han apostado por la extrema derecha mundial, apoyando a Donald Trump. Esto es lo que realmente me preocupa, pero también me preocupa lo que le pasó a Charlotta que es a pequeña escala. Y creo que la inteligencia artificial hay que utilizarla para bien, pero reguladamente.
Thank you. Dumitru, please. 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was rapporteur for digital identity and data sovereignty here in this House for an opinion, and we discussed a lot about this AI developments. My question is quite simple. It's about, because you are for a progressive, for social progress, organization which is dedicated to social progress. And I imagine these developments in the AI will guide us towards a society, towards a philosophical and political system which will recognize the role of shareholder of each user and citizen, which is integrated and which is contributing in functioning of this system. So do you see this as a political solution to tackle these developments in order to put, how to say, under control these extractivist approaches, which Mr. Dawes said, so it will accelerate the accumulation of value in a few hands, so it's obviously what the humanity doesn't want to have. So AI, it's a promise for the future, but we cannot accept that a few individuals using the talents of everyone will get richer and richer and will control us in a near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dumitru. Aida?
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to everybody, because it was a fascinating experience to hear you. But my question is directly to Stefan also, please. And you mentioned that the Commission President von der Leyen spoke about this Quality Jobs Roadmap, and that there might be, or there will be a Quality Job Act next year. Also, I think that President von der Leyen spoke about possible initiative on algorithmic management. I think that this is still in the dossier of Commissioner Minsatu. Is there something that you can share about that? What would be the scope, or what are the ideas behind an initiative on algorithmic management? Thank you.
Thank you very much to the point. Angela, please, 1 minute.
Yes, I'm talking in Italian. Sì, innanzitutto grazie. Non ripeto quanto già detto dai colleghi, in quanto condivido le riflessioni e le domande dei colleghi. Giusto 2 riferimenti molto veloci. Sul discorso dell'intelligenza artificiale condivido quanto avete detto, però penso, e lo stiamo facendo anche all'interno della mia organizzazione sindacale in Italia, che non ci si debba solo difendere. Noi ad esempio, dai quelli che sono i potenziali rischi dell'intelligenza artificiale, noi ad esempio come organizzazione sindacale stiamo sviluppando in collaborazione con delle grandi aziende un nostro sistema di intelligenza artificiale a disposizione del sindacato, dei lavoratori, dei sindacalisti nelle negoziazioni. Siamo già in fase molto avanzata e abbiamo intenzione di utilizzarlo come strumento non di difesa ma di attacco da questo punto di vista. Mi hanno colpito dopo i dati relativamente ai public procurement, agli appalti pubblici. Le cifre effettivamente sono enormi. Giusto un rimando, non riguardano solo esclusivamente le normative sociali, ma la questione relativa agli appalti pubblici riguarda in questa fase tutte le questioni relative alle riforme all'interno del mercato interno. Riguarda la single market strategy, riguarda la possibile futura riforma sui public procurement, riguarda anche il quadro pluriennale, il quadro finanziario pluriennale, riguarda il fondo di competitività, dove noi come gruppo 2 all'interno del Comitato Economico e Sociale stiamo cercando di negoziare dei riferimenti a condizionalità sociali che richiamino e rimandino alla contrattazione collettiva, che è l'elemento cardine per assicurare competitività e produttività. Grazie.
Thank you very much. Aurélie?
Bonjour, je vais parler français. Merci beaucoup pour vos interventions très éclairantes. On voit bien que derrière les enjeux économiques et aujourd'hui l'IA est prise d'un point de vue essentiellement économique dans la course avec notamment les États-Unis mais aussi la Chine. Il y a des enjeux écologiques, sociaux et démocratiques, puisque c'est véritablement l'état de droit qui est menacé par la boîte noire. Or, aujourd'hui, on s'apprête à adopter on va vers un omnibus digital qui ne prend pas la voie de nouvelles réglementations, mais qui vise davantage à s'inscrire dans cette course au développement de l'IA à tout prix. Comment est-ce que comment porter cette vision beaucoup plus complexe de l'IA et finalement défendre les valeurs européennes à travers l'état de droit face aux assauts d'une logique économique de court terme.
Thank you very much. Diana Charlotta.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I actually wanted to ask a very specific question, but that was already raised by Aida, so I'll leave it to a general comment. So my impression is that we are actually entering this debate and introducing AI in our economy, in our societies, building on the premise of fear of missing out. So that we actually, everyone is doing it, so we should also be doing it. But without a prerequisite debate, a fundamental debate in our society, what do we want from AI? Why are we introducing AI? And I'm not referring only to companies. I've seen many examples of companies uncritically introducing AI without knowing what they want to do, what they want to achieve with this AI and how is it going to function. But more problematically, we as societies are not having this fundamental debate, what kind of AI we want to have. And I think this is the role of EU, when we compare ourselves to the US. So this is where we have to stand out with having this bolder vision, to promoting a bolder vision of AI and to be able to create a better version of AI. Because what we are now seeing is that we are building our debates on these promises of AI, which are at best false promises. And at worst, and I think this is the reality that we have in practice, that AI is being actually used as an alibi to undermine workers' rights and worker conditions. But without this proper debate, and this is where the workers' group should lead this debate, we cannot have a better version of society and a better competitiveness. We don't compete just on economic terms. This is not what the EU is. And I think this is where our role has to be. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. And Zoe.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations to the Workers' Group for this very timely and very fascinating initiative and session. What I would like is to delve into the panelists' mind about the need we have as trade unions, as workers, to somehow demystify this event that is unfolding before us. Because yes, it is novel, There are many challenges, but if we look in a wider context, we see that we have a continuation of, well-known historic capitalistic work practices. We have a neo-Tayloristic logic into how work is being, cut into pieces and managed into small segments, which is adds another dimension to exploitation. So I think we should avoid technological determinism, and would the panelists agree that, for trade unions, working in the trade unions, we are completely, I'm sorry to say, unprepared. Our members are not prepared to deal with digital capitalism as a whole and this facet of artificial intelligence. These things evolve very, very, very quickly. And from Charlotte Kronblad's intervention, we had this new window for me, which is, opened another, how this challenge combines with institutional bottlenecks to create new inequalities and new redlining and, marginalized segments of people. So thank you again for a wonderful morning.
Thank you very much. Back to you. Last floor. You give the floor to whomever here.
The panelists are mine. So I would like to ask, in this case, the editors and the authors, and Stefan, if they would like to give short reactions. Short, I'm saying between 1 and 2 minutes, because that's how we can end on time. Would you like to start?
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the relevant points being raised here. I think one of the most important points that were raised is what we sometimes call question zero, and that is, should we use AI in this example or in this problem? And let's start by asking that question instead of like, oh, it would be fun to use AI. It's important to start, why, which AI, which digital tool, owned by who, and where does the data end up? So that's, of course, much more boring than finding a nice AI tool online, but also much more important. And I think that also points at aspects also raised by several of the speakers of technological determinism and the problems of portraying AI as a race. And there's power actually in that rhetoric figure. So let's try to refrain by speaking about artificial intelligence as a race. And I think another interesting criticism on the book raised by the speakers is actually, aren't there any positive examples? And well, I think that's actually a good point. We tend to point out the problems, and that's not because there's no positive examples. But one of the positive examples in the book is actually from a small municipality in northern Sweden, Sundsvall, who is developing their own algorithms, just pointing at the fact that we don't want to be owned by a big tech. We don't want to send our data overseas somewhere. We want to develop it ourselves. Another chapter is pointing out like everything we can do with algorithms or artificial intelligence. We can put everything online. I mean, we can increase transparency, but it's a political decision. We need to decide to use tech to increase democracy, not to decrease it. Thank you.
Yes, I want to add on to this the upside, because I mean some of these companies that operate in this sphere, their fundamental principles are move fast and break things, and this could work in a private sector environment where the consequences are not so high, but for the public administration, public sector, there's lives on stake. So you have to work in, I mean, there's ways to do that, but you have to work in other ways than the big tech companies. And then second is on the spending, and I think we're all a bit aghast on the massive money that's flowing into this sector. And I mean, they want to get the money back, right? This is not, they don't give the money away, and we know who risk paying this in the end. And they work through a monopolistic model, right? So it's a good question. And then last, I think about the shareholder and the user. And I mean, we have for a long time paid lip service to the phrase that the workers and the users should actually be involved in the algorithms, but we don't really see it. And to quote the last year's Nobel Prize winner, he said, workers should take control over AI, end quote. I mean, this is our goal, but we have still quite a far way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlotta?
Thank you so much. Very many insightful comments to this discussion, I think. What I want to add to that, or that made me reflect further, is really this combination of black boxes or system being black box together, being wrapped up in the same wrapping paper, and then the individual systems are even harder to contest and actually correct and look into. So I think that is a very vital point to get to. And I also think that as many of the points here have been, I think it's vital to understand that there is no ethical AI. There are more or less ethical ways to use and implement AI. And we need to have AI literacy, which is a concept mentioned in the AI Act, to actually understand how to do that in the correct and an ethical way. So I think to have these conversations around both good and bad ways to use AI is vital to actually do it in an ethical way. So thank you for being so engaged in this discussion.
Thank you much. Christina?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, brilliant points. Let me just highlight a couple on the increasing expenses, data centers amongst them. I think we all should realize that Microsoft this year has taken away all discounts on multiple licenses. So if you're a municipality or university, you have multiple, all that's been cut. And because they know we are so now dependent on them, they're doing this. It's arrogant, right? And of course, the cost of data centers, the cost of mining for the rare minerals, all of that's going to go up, and it will be pushed onto the consumers. On the fear of missing out, I really appreciate that comment, because if you look at why a lot of companies are introducing technology, it's mainly because the competitors have them. Or, you know, McKinsey or some of the other big five tech consultancies persuade them to. But there's not a clear strategy, although we have in the GDPR the data minimalization principle, and I think we need to remind public services and employers in the private sector about this, right? I think that would be very, very clear. And then lastly, I think we really also have to address our own dependencies, our own sort of conveniences, because there are alternative solutions out there, LibreOffice instead of Microsoft, and we just really need to say that we ourselves are prepared to be less convenient and more troublesome, but do it for the best of our people. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Stefan.
Thank you very much, and again, very many thanks to the very political and interesting input from everybody here. There was one very specific question from Ida. So the dynamics is that, as I hinted at, in order to prepare the Quality Jobs Roadmap, we went out with a massive consultation, and the issues we've discussed here today came up in that, which should, and it's always difficult to comment on a document that it hasn't been adopted yet, but which should be reflected in the Quality Jobs Roadmap. And as our President has signaled that there will be an act, that means in the procedure many of us are now acquainted with, that there will have to be a two-stage consultation of the social partners before that act is proposed, whatever it entails. And there also needs to be an impact assessment and etc. So I mean, that's a procedural reply, but you'll understand that it's not easy for me to predict how that's going to end. But what is important, and I've said it before, but it is that we all engage, and you engage very practically in 2026 or from as of 3rd of December into the debate on how you feel as politicians, as trade unions, as researchers, what is the best action for the EU in this area, addressing many of the issues we've discussed here, and that the book highlights. I mean, the Act would maybe not deal with some of the issues that we've discussed here. The Act is as I read it, more of a working condition, workers' rights, while many of the issues discussed here were also citizens' rights and democracy issues. So those also will have to be taken in many other fora. But yeah, I hope that helps a bit. Thanks.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. I would like to close this panel with gratitude to the editors and the authors. I think we have a wonderful book. It's inspired this excellent discussion on the side of the panel, but also the very active audience. So thanks to all. And the next... Yes, we will hand over our places to the next panel, which will be moderated by